The moment the hotel manager ordered security to escort the dark-skinned cleaner out through the service exit, he believed he was enforcing standards. He believed he was protecting luxury, reputation, and order. What he did not know was that within hours, every decision he had made that morning would return to destroy him. And before we continue, I want to ask you something. Who are you, and where are you watching from right now? What city or country are you in? Write it in the comments. And if you enjoy realistic life stories where injustice is exposed and truth always comes out, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like this video right now. It helps us more than you think. Now let me tell you this story. The Orleans Grand was not just a hotel. It was a symbol. Marble floors polished until they reflected chandeliers like mirrors. Staff trained to smile without emotion. Guests who never asked for prices, only for silence and control. Everyone who worked there knew one rule above all others. Appearance was everything. And that rule was enforced by Richard Heil. Richard had arrived as the new general manager only 3 months earlier, but already the staff feared him. He spoke often about discipline, brand image, and eliminating weakness. He did not yell. He did not need to. His tone alone was enough to make people shrink. To him, employees were not people. They were positions. Tools that could be replaced. And at the very bottom of that hierarchy were the cleaners. Invisible figures who moved through corridors at night, whose names were never learned, and whose presence was tolerated only when they were unnoticed. One of them was Naomi Carter. She worked the night shift and often stayed later than required. She cleaned slowly, methodically, never rushing. Some staff found her strange because she asked no questions, complained about nothing, and avoided conversations. Others barely remembered her face. To most, she was simply part of the background. On the morning everything changed, the hotel was preparing for an important visit. A group of investors was expected to arrive by noon. The lobby had to be perfect. Richard walked through the ground floor with sharp eyes, inspecting every detail, already irritated by the pressure of the day. That was when he noticed Naomi. She was wiping the marble floor near the reception area, her cleaning cart beside her. Richard stopped abruptly. He did not like seeing cleaners during peak hours. In his mind, they disrupted the illusion of perfection. He approached her without hesitation. In a clear, cold voice, he asked why she was still there. Naomi calmly replied that she had been instructed to finish a specific section before leaving. Richard did not ask who gave that instruction. He did not check the schedule. He saw only what offended him. A cleaner visible in the main hall hours before investors arrived. His voice rose slightly as he accused her of breaking protocol. People began to notice. Guests slowed their steps. Staff pretended not to listen while listening to everything. Richard spoke about rules, standards, and consequences. He said she was careless. He said she was replaceable. He said she embarrassed the hotel. Naomi listened without interrupting. Her expression did not change. When Richard finished, he made a decision that felt natural to him. He fired her on the spot. He told security to remove her immediately and instructed them to use the service exit so guests would not see her leave. It was not just dismissal. It was humiliation. Naomi looked at him for a long second and then spoke quietly. She said he was making a mistake. Richard smiled with disbelief. He had heard excuses before. He turned away, already finished with her in his mind. Security escorted Naomi out. She did not argue. She did not raise her voice. She handed over her badge and walked away without looking back. Within minutes, the lobby returned to normal, or at least it appeared to. Richard felt satisfied. He believed he had demonstrated authority. He believed the staff had learned something. What he did not see was the subtle shift that followed. Later that morning, the administrative office received a system alert. Naomi Carter's employee profile could not be deactivated. Her access level did not match her position. The system flagged her name as linked to internal legal documentation. A junior administrator reported it, uncertain and nervous. Richard dismissed it without reading further. He said it was a technical error and ordered them to focus on the investors. As noon approached, tension grew. The investors arrived precisely on time, escorted into a private conference room. They were polite but direct. They asked when they would meet the principal owner. Richard explained that the owner preferred discretion and would either join remotely or arrive later. The investors exchanged looks. They said they had been informed the owner would attend in person. Richard assured them everything was under control, but something was not under control. In the security office, Elena Brooks reviewed incident reports. She paused at Naomi's file, the dismissal time, the access anomaly, the unresolved system lock. Elena had worked at Aurelius Grand for years. She trusted systems more than people, and the system was telling her something was wrong. She attempted to access Naomi's employment records and found restrictions she had never seen before. This was not the profile of a cleaner. This was the profile of someone protected. She called Richard to inform him. He cut her off, irritated. He told her not to bother him with nonsense on such an important day. Elena hesitated, but complied. Still, she could not ignore the feeling that something irreversible had already begun. In the conference room, the investors waited. Minutes passed. Richard checked his watch repeatedly. He tried to maintain confidence, but a quiet unease settled in his chest. He remembered Naomi's words, "You're making a mistake." He shook the thought away. People like her always said things like that. He told himself this situation was no different. What he did not know was that the real meeting had already begun somewhere else, and it would soon walk straight through the front doors of the Aurelius Grand. While Richard sat in the conference room trying to keep the investors distracted with small talk and coffee refills, a quiet change took place in the lobby. There was no announcement, no dramatic entrance, no rush of attention. A woman walked in alone, dressed simply but with purpose, moving at a steady pace that suggested she belonged exactly where she was. A few employees noticed her and instinctively straightened their posture without knowing why. Security did not stop her. The system recognized her before any human did. Upstairs, Elena Brooks received a notification on her screen. An access authorization had just been activated at the highest internal level. The name attached to it made her breath catch. Naomi Carter. Elena stood up immediately. She did not call Richard this time. She knew that whatever was happening needed to unfold without interference. In the conference room, an assistant quietly entered and leaned toward Richard, whispering that the owner had arrived and was requesting the meeting to begin now. Richard frowned, irritated by the lack of ceremony. He stood, adjusted his jacket, and told the investors they could finally begin. When the door opened, Richard expected an executive entourage, lawyers, advisors, maybe security. Instead, he saw Naomi. For a fraction of a second, his brain rejected what his eyes were showing him. Then recognition hit. The room went silent. Naomi stepped inside calmly and closed the door behind her. She introduced herself without emotion, stating her name and thanking everyone for their patience. One of the investors immediately stood up and greeted her with respect, addressing her as the principal owner of the Aurelius Grand. Richard felt the floor disappear beneath him. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Naomi continued speaking, her voice steady, explaining that she preferred to observe her properties quietly before making strategic decisions. She spoke about values, leadership, and culture. Then she turned her attention to Richard. She asked him to explain why he believed public humiliation was an acceptable management tool. The question was not loud. It did not need to be. Richard tried to speak. He attempted to justify his actions using words like protocol and standards, but each sentence collapsed under its own weight. Naomi interrupted him once. She reminded him that standards without dignity were nothing more than abuse disguised as professionalism. She then revealed that she had worked in the hotel under her real name, without protection, without privileges, to see how people treated those they believed had no power. She said she had learned everything she needed to know, The investors listened closely. One of them asked how the situation would be handled. Naomi replied that leadership was not a performance, and consequences were not negotiable. She informed Richard that his position had been terminated effective immediately. Not just from the Aurelis Grand, but from any property connected to her portfolio. Legal documentation had already been filed. His access had been revoked. His reputation, however, was his own responsibility. Richard stood frozen. There was no anger in Naomi's voice, no satisfaction. Only finality. She then addressed the room, stating that several complaints against management had been reviewed and confirmed. Additional dismissals would follow. Training protocols would change. Reporting systems would be made anonymous and protected. Respect would no longer be optional. After the meeting, word spread quickly through the hotel. Employees whispered in hallways. Some felt relief. Some felt fear. One security guard approached Naomi privately. He apologized for following the order to remove her earlier. Naomi listened and thanked him for his honesty. She told him accountability mattered, but so did integrity. He was given another chance. Richard, meanwhile, left the building through the same service exit he had ordered Naomi to use. No one stopped him. No one watched. The illusion he had protected so fiercely did not follow him outside. Later that evening, Naomi stood alone in the lobby after the guests had returned to their rooms. She looked at the polished floors, the reflections, the quiet. She removed the Cleaner S uniform she had kept folded in her bag and placed it carefully inside a cabinet. Not as a symbol of victory, but as a reminder. Power, she believed, did not change people, it revealed them. And before this story ends, let me ask you again. If this story moved you, if you believe respect should never depend on status or appearance, support the channel by subscribing and liking this video. Your engagement helps us share more real stories like this one.